Hey guys, Waterfaller41 here. Real quick before we get into the video, just want to send a huge thank you to the Doug Thorley team. They provided the headers for this video, and without companies like that, we wouldn't have these YouTube reviews. So kudos to them. It's great. They went on a limb here, so I truly appreciate it. That said, working with them has been a blessing. They're a great team to work with, and they've actually provided some cool stuff here. So. Watching this video, you obviously have some interest in Doug Thorley products, or you're just curious what a GMC sounds like with headers. But in the next 30 days, so the second this video goes live, you got 30 days, and they provided me a coupon code to share. So that coupon code will get you 10% discount on Doug Thorley products, and then it'll get you flat $10 shipping. So the coupon code is Unboxed352. And the way this works is pick out what you want, go through the Doug Thorley catalog, figure out whatever you want, then give them a ring, and I'll have their number down at the bottom of the video, and then share with them the Unbox352 coupon code, and that will get you the 10% discount and then $10 flat rate shipping. They're an awesome company, and I encourage you to hop on the website and check it out. They're really easy to talk to. They had answers for every question I had with them, and the biggest part was the answers were coming back quickly. It wasn't a 1 week turnaround on when I sent them an email or when I gave them a call and left a voicemail and they'd call me back. It was almost immediately. They'd either be calling me back or they're on the phone answering any of the questions I had with the install. So yeah, enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you got any questions, share them below, and I'll try to answer them as quick as I can. Thanks for watching.
I've got an awesome part to look at today. I knew when I bought my truck there was three things that I absolutely had to do to the truck. One, I wanted to install a cold air intake. That's done. Two, I want to put on a catback exhaust system. That's done. And then the third part to that puzzle piece was I wanted to install headers. So after looking around on the internet for quite a while, I finally gave the guys at Doug Thorley a call because I was interested in the design. It sets itself apart from your typical 4-into-1 long tube headers out on the market. And we'll look at that once I get the box open here. But the part came the other day, so let's go ahead and tear into the box here. So the box has seen its better days. I think we'll go and roll it this way. Go pull everything out from this side. We got our hardware kit here. And instructions, look like a couple grip brackets, some gaskets, and then some tearing in here. Alright, so the first thing I did want to note on this guy is the Doug Thorley team for our 5.3 engines, as of right now and as far as I know, they only make one header assembly for it. And basically it's your long tube headers that they're Tri-y design, but they do not offer a catted version for our trucks. Right now the version that I have and the version that's available for our trucks is the off-road version. So instead of a cat, it's a straight pipe through on the Y. So this is an off-road application, which means two things. One, truck's going to be awfully loud. So those cats acted almost as a pre-muffler for your stock muffler. And then the second thing this means is you're going to be throwing a check engine light, and that check engine light is going to be as a result of those O2 sensors that they used to be behind the head, the cats, and I think that's this bung right here. So what's going to happen is that's going to be taking readings on your exhaust, and it's not picking up the catalytic converter, so all of a sudden it's going to throw a check engine light. That's fixable, and we're certainly going to go down that path, but as far as this install, we're not going to worry about that for now. That's going to be for a separate video, but this will require a tuner later on to get rid of that check engine light. Alright, so if you're unfamiliar with the, I think it's 2014 Plus exhaust system, basically the way it works is you got the headers, they come down from the side of the engine, and then they come into a Y, and this Y connects to the rest of the exhaust via this, we'll call it a ball fitting. So the catback exhaust system I have on my truck is made to connect up to the factory headers, and this is made to mimic the factory headers. So ideally, my aftermarket exhaust on my truck currently should fit onto this joint here without any sort of modification. That's I'm hoping for. I've heard in the past on other cars, with other installs, they've had to modify this just to make everything fit, because certain pieces are long, and that's what happens when you're putting two pieces aftermarket from different manufacturers together. And here are a lot of pieces. Ah, the exciting part. There it is. Let's open this up. Alright, there is the passenger side header, and this shows really why I went with the Doug Thorley headers over any of the other headers right now on the market. This shows the design that they have. It's not your typical 4 headers, or 4 each bank of the engine dumps into one main collector at the bottom. Rather, this design, and I think this is kind of a mimic from, came out of the NASCAR industry, I believe, where they couple the cylinders that are going to be 180 phased out from each other. So this will be pumping its exhaust pulse down the exhaust, down the manifold, while this one's going to be up at, I think at bottom dead center. So this one's going to be shooting its exhaust down, while this one's not doing that. Then once this piston's shooting its exhaust down, this one's not. And basically what that allows to happen, and again, this is just me, I'm not a header expert by any means, but this is what I've seen and kind of what I've read about these Tri-y headers, is because you're phasing up, or because you're matching up two pistons that are opposite phases, you're going to get better flow out of here. And one of the biggest pros of the Tri-y design, and this has been around for a long time, I understand, is you get a lot better low and mid-range torque out of these headers versus the typical 4-to-1, where you get a lot of high-end torque and high-end horsepower out of those. So basically, with these headers more in the middle of the curve, you're gonna feel the difference. With the other 4-to-1 headers, it's gonna be felt more up on the top of the curve. You might take a little bit of a hit in the middle on the way getting there. And to me, that was important because this is about the extent of performance upgrades I'm going to be doing in my truck. So I'm not going to be adding a supercharger or turbo where I really want that 4-to-1 design. I'm going to keep it naturally aspirated. And I think, in my opinion, this is a great way to go about increasing the horsepower and torque on a usable torque and usable horsepower. I'm not constantly hammering on the gas, so top end horsepower and torque really isn't of interest to me. That how fast I get to the top end certainly does interest me, and that's kind of why I went with this design. So overall, this is a solid piece. It is quite heavy, so hopefully we can equate heavy with durability. Time will tell on that one. But it's a well-built piece so far. You got your bung for your front O2, and then I was showing you earlier, your bung for your back O2 goes in there, and there's going to be, I believe, 4 O2 sensors total, so 2 front ones and then 2 back ones. The front ones are the ones that I believe are adjusting your fuel, so you want these things to be reading properly, but the back ones are just measuring the effectiveness of your catalytic converter. So if they're not there, basically it's saying that your catalytic converter is either bad or, in our case, non-existent. Sweet header. I am beyond excited to install these things. I cannot wait to get these on the truck. More parts for us. Yep. Alright, here's the driver's side. Looks like it takes a little bit of a different path here. Let's size these guys up. Alright, we got everything out of the box and laid out, so let's run through kind of the whole layout here and what we're looking at. So obviously we got our 2 Tri-y headers, and then we got our driver's side and our passenger side. Driver's side's short, which is why the Y pipe is a little bit extended, and that gets the exhaust over to the, we'll call it the main collector, which is, I think it's located more off to the passenger side of the truck. Then you got your passenger side header, and that's going to feed into the passenger side of the Y. And then you got your, like I was saying earlier, here's your bung for your front O2, your bung for your back O2, and then the same thing on this side. You got your back O2 on the Y pipe, and then you got your front O2 right there. Welds look awesome. So let's kind of run through the layout here. So you got your headers, then you got your first coupler, and the way this coupler works is there's this gasket here. This slips into the header side, and then this flange portion pushes up against it, and that should seal up the joint. And then you got this three bolt flange here that just holds everything together, and it pinches up everything pretty good. Then you run down the Y pipe, and then this feeds into again, we'll call it the Y collector. So that fits in there as such, and then you use this pipe clamp to hold everything together. I'm typically not a big fan of these, and there's a couple reasons. One, it sort of makes the install permanent. So once you clamp the hell out of these things, you end up pinching the metal and then getting everything taken apart. In case if in the event you ever change your mind or you want to go a different direction with the truck, it's a bitch trying to get these things off, or trying to get the joint apart after you've taken off the pipe clamp. I'm a big fan of the sleeve fittings. There's a sleeve coupler that basically pinches down. They're probably just as effective. But the other thing that concerns me with these things is when they do pinch down on these joints, what they do is they cause a high spot. And as hot air flows over that high spot, what tends to happen is corrosion collects on the low side of that high spot. So let's say we put the pipe clamp here and it pinches everything down. So basically it'll make a high spot in here inside the exhaust, but on the back side of it, moisture is going to tend to collect back there, and that's where you're going to get your rusters if ever, if it ever happens. So typically, when I get exhaust parts or anything like that with these pipe clamps, I try to swap them out. All right, so headers, Y pipe, the driver's side Y pipe extension. Then you go into your main Y pipe collector, which is what's going to connect you to your catback exhaust. So this is the top of it. So this part is going to be up against the bottom of the truck. But if you flip it over, you got two mounting points here. So I was reading the instructions, and it looks like this part sits on top of the cross brace underneath your truck. And then it mounts, so there's a spacer there. Then there's this bracket, and that bracket bolts up to, it looks like the back side of that cross brace. So once you get this stuff installed, and then I didn't realize that there's another bracket down here holding everything together. This is going to be a solid system. I mean, there's going to be no wiggle room for any of this stuff, and I like that. That's going to be a pretty quality install. Alright guys, in case I didn't say the part number before, it is THY352YLC, and it looks like it fits 2014 GM Silverado Sierras, Suburbans, Tahoes, Yukons, 5.3 to 6.2. So my understanding is if you have the 6.2, I'll show you the part you need to modify. I believe this portion here needs to be modified for it to fit. So 5.3 engines, this fits, no modifications needed to it. But if you have the 6.2, the 6.2 stock exhaust is 3 inches, and I believe the 5.3 is 2.5 or 2 3/4 or something of that sort. So again, this is designed to fit up to the stock 5.3 exhaust, so that 2.5, where your 6.2 is going to be 3. So I assume you either lop that off and then just have an exhaust shop weld down an adapter to go to the bigger exhaust, or there's other options you could take. But 5.3, this should be a bolt-on application. 6.2, some slight modifications to that ball collector right there. And let me point out my favorite part of these headers right now. Right there. Made in the USA. Alright guys, it's finally install day, so let's run through sort of what we're going to be doing here. So here's our 5.3. There is the driver's side header. So really the plan of attack, I know all the instructions for all these header companies say you could attack it from the top and the bottom, but what I notice is once we remove that wheel well liner over there, looks like we get really nice access into both the driver's side as well as the passenger side header, and I think the passenger side header will really benefit from going into the wheel well. So we're going to take that plan of attack. Again, it doesn't say that in instructions, but based on what I'm seeing and reading on the forums, it looks like that's probably the best way to do it, and probably the quickest one from a time perspective. I don't think much else needs to be removed, so we're going to have to remove the spark plug wires on each of the cylinders. Looks like the oil dipstick's going to have to come out of the way to get the driver's side one out. I don't know if we're going to have to remove that bolt on the steering shaft there. A lot of the instructions do say to do that, and it might be just to buy yourself, that 2 more inches that it looks like it'll free up.
but I don't think that's needed in our in this install. If we have to remove it, we will, and I'll bring that up. But I'm gonna leave it attached right now, and we'll see how far we can get. But I have a cold air intake on here, so that frees up a lot of the space in the engine bay. If you have the stock air box, I think it kind of takes up all this space. It may be easier and beneficial to remove that. That way you got, you know, kind of access to pretty much everything. Last couple of days, each night I've been spraying all the bolts on the headers and the cats with WD-40 penetrating spray. It's supposed to break up all the rust in there. The truck only has 50,000 miles. I don't think it's going to be an issue. But you never know, and I'd rather make it easier for myself than harder. So that's the top and kind of the approach we're going to take on the headers. Now if we go below the truck, and I put the truck up on ramps so it's easier to get to everything. We have the factory Y here, and that goes up to each cat. So it connects almost near the wheel well. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to drop that cross brace the transmission, so we can get the stock Y pipe out of there. And the reason why we need to drop that is because you got that third cat right there that's going to be in the way, and it's not going to be able to move up over this. You really don't have a lot of play in this area. So we're going to drop this brace, and that's what all the instructions say. Drop this brace and then hold up transmission while you pull out the Y pipe. Alright guys, so we started taking off all the screws inside the wheel well. So my truck has the fiberboard wheel well liner. Overall, these are the 13 screws that hold the fender liner to the actual truck, and then these two screws up here hold the trim. I don't know if Silverados have it, but you know, obviously Sierras have it, and Sierras have that plastic trim, which I'm not aware of any Chevys that do. You're also gonna have to remove whatever mud flaps you have on here. I had the Husky liners on here, so took those off, and it looks like everything's freed up at this point, so we're gonna go ahead and try to wiggle it out of here. I think the secret is it's underneath the fender trim itself, so we're gonna try to pull all the fiber liner that way and then down and just kind of manipulate it out of there. Looks like we're gonna be doing some monkeying around with it. I really want to avoid taking off the wheel, because then, you know, everything's already on ramps and it just gets a little bit hairier once you got everything on jack stands. And I don't think we're gonna need to put it on jack stands, because I think once you get this liner out, the header's right there, so it's pretty easy access. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get this guy out of here. Alright, we finally got the liner out. It took me about a couple seconds of wiggling around, kind of figuring out what the correct path to getting it out was. But what the big hang up was it kept getting caught on here. So this thing's pretty malleable. It's, you know, pretty flexible. You can move it around as much as you want. But I'm really happy because look what opens up really easy access there. So I'm excited because it looked like the passenger side was going to be a nightmare if the only route to the header was from above. So I am very happy that I'll be able to get to it from this angle. And it looks like I'll get to all the spark plugs too. So that is awesome. I'm not sure why all the instructions for all the headers out there say to go through the top. But on the 14s and up, it certainly is a lot easier to just going right through the wheel well. That way you get direct. Alright, so just to kind of catch you up on where we're at right now, we went ahead and removed the spark plug wires and the dipstick top. The other thing I did is loosen up this plastic piece of trim, because it looks like that's going to get in the way of a few things. I didn't take it off completely because there's a hose going into it. It looks like a coolant hose, which I don't want to be messing around with. The other thing I'm debating about right now is either removing my spark plugs or just being really careful when taking out the header. We'll see once I get these bolts out, you know, where we're at with all that stuff. But what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and take that heat shield off. My understanding is if you take that off, it frees up a little bit more room around the header, each of the pipes, so you can get a ratchet in there a little bit easier. But rundown of what we have off the driver's side so far. The first thing we took out was the wheel well liner. So we got all our wheel well liner screws there. The next thing we tackled was the heat shield. This was 3 easy 10mm bolts. 1, 2, and 3. This thing popped right off, no issue. But yeah, this freed up a lot of space. Kind of a bulky shield, but I get why they put them on. But yeah, taking that off definitely bought us a lot of room on the header pipes. Then after that, we removed the spark plug wires, and you just pull off. They just slide on the spark plug here, and then the boot here connects up to the top, the ignition coil. Then after that, we went ahead and removed the spark plugs on the driver's side. I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but they're right in the way, and with that wheel well opened, it's, you know, I'd be a fool not to take them out. So let's take a look at what we have left in there. So as you can see, without that heat shield, definitely opens things up. So what I'm going to do now is start breaking free those bolts. That way, then from here I could tackle the passenger side. After that, go underneath the car and start loosening up that Y pipe. But I think these may take me a while, so that's why I wanted to start up here and then work my way back. Don't know how well you guys can see this, but we were able to get a lot of the bolts out of the driver's side header. That back one is proving to be quite a bitch, so we're going to leave that one in for now. I have, let's see, looks like there's three of the 5 bolts still in. These 2 are loosened up. That back one I couldn't get to just yet. Have extensions ready. So I have extensions and U-joints, and this is how I was breaking those bolts free. It doesn't take Hulk strength to break those free. It was pretty easy. Those front 2 I was able to get from the top of the truck, and then the other 2 I was able to get from the wheel well. I think with that back one, I'm going to want to remove the wheel so I can get a little bit more access in there. But we'll leave that one on for now, and then we're going to start working on the Y pipe. I wanted to do the top on the driver's side just so I had an idea of what to expect on that passenger side, because like I said, there's a lot more crap in the way. So if I know what tools I need from this side, it'll be a lot faster to do the other side. So we're going to start working on the Y pipe. So we're going to unbolt these guys up here, undo the O2 sensors, and then drop that cross brace so we can get the Y pipe out, and then go ahead and button up everything underneath there. And I think we could slip on the aftermarket Y pipe from Doug Thorley without having that cross brace drop down. So I think everything could pop in there, you know, with that brace still up. So let's go ahead and dive into that stuff. Alright guys, I'm pretty happy here. So I was able to get all 3 bolts on this side as well as the 3 bolts on the other side undone. It wasn't easy, and it took a buttload of extensions. So this is the tool I ended up using. I had a U-joint on the end with a 15mm extended socket, so the longer socket. Then on top of that, I had to use that piece of plastic as sort of a breaker to give me a little bit more leverage down here. But once you break them, everything frees up pretty easily. So everything's loosened up there. I think it's once you get 2 bolts out, that 3rd bolt's a lot easier to get because there isn't as much pressure on it, because it's the 3 bolts kind of holding the, it's like a ball basically, like the aftermarket ones are. But yeah, once you break them free, I sprayed the hell out of them with that penetrating lube, so we got all that rust eaten up, and then, you know, everything broke free. But I mean, it's a loud crack once it comes out, but everything's backing out pretty cleanly. So I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat, and then we're gonna come back and take down this cross brace here. And then once we get this cross brace out, we should be able to get that back end of the Y pipe out, freed up, get everything out of here, put the brace back up, and then get back on the passenger side and start dealing with the headers. So after I eat, I'm going to come back up here and unplug all the O2 sensors. So you got one up there, one of the plugs is here, and then the same thing on the other side, and then we should be about done with the driver's side and then the Y pipe, and then we just got to go do the passenger side. So, and then we got to get that last bolt on the driver's side. So, food time. Alright guys, here is the back O2 sensor on the driver's side. I wanted to show you how to disassemble this. So there's these white tabs inside the actual connector. You got to use a flathead to pry that up, and there's a lip on there. I don't know if you see it, but you got to get it past that lip, and then you take a little tiny flathead screwdriver. Where did my screwdriver go? Like this guy, and you slide it in here, and it picks up the end of that white tab up over the little tang, and then it pops out pretty nicely. It helps to pop this out of the little hole. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect all the other ones, and then it's back to getting that transmission cross brace out, and then I think it's smooth sailing on the Y pipe. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do here is free up the Y pipe and this cross brace. So I think what we're going to do is take this off here, and this is just basically a skid plate for the transmission, and then we're going, or I'm sorry, yeah, no, the transfer case. And then we're going to take a block of wood, put it up underneath here, get a car jack, and hold everything up. So then we can unbolt these 4 screws, and I think the 4 on the other side, or maybe just unbolt one of these things, let it pivot off, loosen this guy out, let it pivot, and then unbolt those since the Y pipe is mostly on that side. and then drop these 2 bolts out so this thing could swing down and we could take the Y pipe out. So we're gonna make an attempt at that. So first thing that needs to come off is these 4 screws or bolts, and then we're gonna take off the inside completely. We're gonna loosen that bad boy. We're gonna take these 2 off and then try to drop this guy with a car jack holding up the transfer case, so everything's still pretty well supported. We got 2 of the bolts on that cross brace taken out. We got 2 left. There are 2 nuts that go up through the cross brace, or that transfer case brace, into the transfer case itself. Those are undone. We got our jack in there holding up the transfer case. I have a buddy on the way who's going to help me drop that, and then so we can get the Y pipe out. So in the meantime, I started working on the passenger side. So same thing here. We're going to go ahead and remove all the spark plugs, heat shield, and then back out all the bolts on the headers. And then I think we're on the it's a downhill ride from here. But so far so good. This is, I think I'm going on 3 hours, and that's working by myself so far. But with a helper, it'll be pretty nice. But I was worried that this side wasn't going to be as easy as the driver's side, but it looks like it's pretty free in here. Alright, we unbolted the bolts on the cross brace. We just got 1 bolt in there, no nut on it, and then the inside one's removed. There was 2 nuts inside here that went to the bottom of the transfer case mount, and then there was additional bolts on this side. So we're going to pop these bolts out, and then this brace should technically come straight down, and we got the transfer case jacked up with some wood here, and then just kind of a safety net on the drive shaft down there. But everything else is loosened up. All of the collectors up at the top are unbolted and the bolts are removed, and all the O2 sensors are out, so we're going to go ahead and remove everything. Alright, we got the Y pipe out, so let's just kind of run through what we're looking at here. So this is the, driver's side. That is the passenger side. To get this thing out, the easiest thing was to remove the header on the passenger side. I'll show you real quick. Removing that header, and I have the spark plugs in, so go ahead and sue me on that one. But removing the header gave the Y pipe enough room for this portion to get pushed forward, and then there was a bracket in the way, but that gave you enough room to kind of move it out of the way. And the whole time we were keeping an eye on the O2 sensors here, just making sure we didn't catch the wires on anything. So the next step here is we're going to go ahead and free these guys up. So this is the last big bolt that's going to cause me issues, I think. But we'll put some PB blaster on there and take them off. Just making sure that we know that these are the fronts and these are the rears. Obviously, we're going to have a check engine light because the rears are going to be picking up no cats at this point. But yeah, we'll go ahead and take those off. And then set them on the new Y pipe and then on the new headers, and then we should be starting to assemble everything else. But we got to remove that. Let's go back over here real quick. We got to remove the driver's side one, which that back bolt is causing me some issues. So hopefully I can get that out of there. Here's one of the front sensors removed. We put some anti-seize on it, so once we put it in the new header, so it's going to go on the passenger side header there, it's not a pain in the ass to get off in the event we ever need to get it off, and so it doesn't get seized on there or rusted on there. But overall, it's pretty easy to get them off. Get the proper tool to remove them, so you can rent these things at Advanced Auto Parts, and then a hammer kind of help free it up and break the rust free. But again, 50,000 miles, it wasn't really sealed up on there too bad. So we got one more, and then we're going to start assembling. Alright, we got the old exhaust completely out. So there are the stock headers and then the stock Y, and obviously we remove the O2 sensors. So these are your front cats. Those are the ones that are doing all the work. And then based on what I'm reading, this is called the California cat. A lot of people gut them, so if you're going to gut it, that's what it looks like inside. I don't know if you can see it in there. But a lot of people do also cut here and just weld in a straight pipe for a little bit louder of a exhaust. And then here's the Doug Thorley exhaust. All the sensors are hooked up, everything's anti-seize, so we're going to go ahead and start installing it. So, got a pretty naked side of the engine on this side. I left one spark plug wire in there, we'll get that one. And then on this side, everything's wide open. This thing was a pain in the ass to get that oil dipstick out, or the transmission dipstick out of the way. It took a lot of finagling. I probably would not have been able to do it on my own. So find a friend to help you on that one. But yep, we're going to go ahead and start installing it. So we're going to start at the headers and work our way back. And then we'll button up everything and then put everything back together. So far, I think I'm going on 4.5, 5 hours. All right, so we got the driver's side header installed. Looks good. Fitment is awesome. I'll show you underneath in a little bit. But one thing we ended up having to do is take apart the steering shaft here. It's just a cross bolt, but it just made things a hell of a lot easier to get in there. So right now, my buddy is starting to button up everything. We reused the existing gasket. Everything looked in good shape. So we're going to leave this thing loose on there. We're going to go ahead and throw the... we'll hold off on the spark plugs, do that last. And then we're going to go do passenger side now, and then just start working our way back. So let me show you underneath. So there is the driver's side, the bottom of the header. The O2 sensor fits perfect right up into the plug up there. So no extensions needed on that guy, so well designed. Not hitting anything as of right now. Looks like it clears everything, but we'll see once we get the Y pipe on there. But next, like I said, we're going to work on the passenger side one. As far as what direction, so those went in through the top. Once we moved the steering shaft out of the way, putting it in through the top, and then just kind of working that oil dipstick through the last two pipes of the header was a hell of a lot easier than trying to slide it through the bottom. I think if you do it through the bottom, you're going to have to move the front drive shaft here, but again, through the top is a lot easier to do it. All right, so we started putting on the Y pipe, I guess the back half of the Y pipe. So we got the header on the passenger side on, the header on the driver's side on. We decided to start with this guy too, because that's going to kind of dictate where everything falls in. And then the slit fit, so this pipe that goes from the driver's side over there, it's a little bit more flexible when you install it. So I think it's better if you install that guy, because everything needs to line up with your catback system. But so far, so good. We had a brief scare, but we just had a bracket on wrong. But other than that, everything's getting buttoned up. So we're going to hand tighten everything, and then we're going to go back up to the headers and start tightening from there and work our way back. But I test fit all the O2 sensors, and everything's lining up. No sensor extensions needed. So that's exciting. So yeah, so we're going to start buttoning up everything, and then hopefully we're done in about an hour. Alright, we got the headers installed, tightened up, got the spark plugs back on, got the spark plug wires, oil dipstick brackets cinched down. My buddy is just finishing up the brackets on the bottom down there. He's just checking the cross brace. Since we loosened that up, we wanted to make sure everything's buttoned down on there. The steering column that we had to take apart to get the header on, that is put back together. Original spark plugs back in, original gaskets on there. Let's see the other side. So here's a look from above on the passenger side. I don't know how much you see, but going down here, they certainly look pretty. So we'll be firing her up soon. Just going to button up everything and make sure our sensors are zip tied up out of the way, because I broke some of the brackets when I was taking them out. One of the recommendations on this stuff, again, the only way I could really foresee you installing these things, or I guess it made it easier, is taking out the wheel well liner, which is pretty easy, and then having U-joints for your sockets. So a couple of these guys available in both sizes. This was definitely helpful when we were putting the header bolts back in. Obviously you don't want to crank down too much on these, but they certainly help out with getting into the hard to reach spots, especially that back bolt back there.